Okay, good afternoon from the UK. It's 2 p.m. right now in Oxford, and the sun is out, and it's a lovely afternoon to be welcoming our three speakers today to this Centre for Global Higher Education webinar. My name's David Mills, and I'm really excited about today's talk. Christian Sadowski and Magdalena Radomowska and Adam Atwort are all working together on projects associated with the Scholarly Communication Research Group at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan. Christian is a senior researcher and has published a range of books on a sort of Marxist critiques of higher education. And this project today, they're talking about is entitled Co-Research into Higher Education, Theory and Practice. And what they're going to describe, I think, is going to be something which is going to be very interesting for all of us, thinking about how to work together with students and faculty to do co-research, to do activist research on our institutions and on what's happening in them. And I'm not going to say any more because I'm looking forward to learning exactly about what they've done. And all I'll say is that, as normal, do keep yourself muted, but post your questions in the chat and we'll get a chance to post them later. So, Christian, Adam, Magdalena, I'm going to hand over to you all. Look forward to it very much. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. I'm sorry for the way how I will be presenting the slides. I hope they're like all visible in this way. Could you confirm?
Yeah, it looks good to me. Thank you.
Okay. So, hello, my name is Christian Sadowski, and together with my colleagues, student colleagues, we will be today discussing a different way of doing higher education research that we practiced for some time, like over the last 2 years together. This practice is called co-research. It's like not something super novel within the, I would say, workers and Marxist social movements. This is like a practice that has some ground already, and it was applied also to higher education reality at some point, but with modest effects. And we simply wanted to share with you our deep enthusiasm for using this method, because we believe that it could be used, even if our results are also local. It could be used to bring some hope to otherwise led by the deep crisis higher education research in terms of a mainstream higher education research. So when I speak about the crisis, there is a tendency, especially right now in the US, to simply give this crisis one human, individualized face, the face of a Trump and his war over the universities in US and its consequences for the international flows of students and general dynamics that affect higher education worldwide. Of course, no matter whether it's a Trump or not, universities are in crisis. But crisis and crisis narratives is something that mainstream higher education research has some deep problems with, accepting the fact that, as in this silly picture, universities are set on fire for some time, and this crisis has some structural features that are well researched. But recently, and as we speak in this close circle of people affiliated with CGHE, you are probably well aware that recently in Higher Education Quarterly, there was a nice special issue devoted to the crisis narrative in higher education research. Like well-established figures, I would say, underestimated the importance of crisis, saying that this is like some sort of a over-exaggeration. But we all know and we all experience the elements of the structural crisis that traverses higher education, whether it is like elements of commercialization of our own universities, whether it is like all perverse forms of precarity imposed on the younger and older researchers, the mass layoffs that traverse the higher education sector in the UK, the repression of students' activism and activists, low wages in the sector, metricization, like increasing volumes of publications demanded by the managers, or the general devastation of the social infrastructure. We all know these different names, but while there is a lot to be told about the dynamics of this crisis, this today's presentation is a modest attempt on how to try to get out of this crisis. And in order to do so, we believe that higher education research as a practice needs a little bit of redesigning and renovation, I would say. Because in order to get out of the crisis, one has to establish a new relationship with the future not only for our higher education institutions, but also for the way how we get to know it and how we aim to change it. So in this presentation, we aim to share with you some insights, but not only on the one side theoretical, but also practical on how to do the higher education research. In these QR codes on the right, you can download these two books that will be at the center of what we will discuss today. While the effect of the core research is not exactly a material outcome, a book, a journal article, but rather an active and expanding student or workers' subjectivity that simply develops its own struggle and the institutions of this struggle, the books that students produced in the process of the core research that we've done over the last 2 years are very important. So if you can, no matter that the books are in Polish, you can simply get through the variegated visual material that is contained in them, and then you will have also a perspective on understanding how much work was done by the students in a very short periods in the process of researching and conducting their struggles. We will talk about that later on. But on the left side of the slide, you have like two books that could satisfy your curiosity on the aspects of a crisis narrative that we share and develop. That says simply in these books you can simply get an idea on the key to the structural crisis of higher education, and we will not discuss much about that during today's presentation. We will focus on methodological problems, at least in the first part of this problem. Methodological problems and the ways how to try at least to overcome them. And in order to discuss these problems, one needs to simply start from discussion of mainstream higher education research as a field. Of course, it is hard to be done over 5 minutes. I can refer you back to the wider criticism contained in the book that I referred before. And of course, Malcolm Tite is not personally responsible for the crisis of the field that he so keenly and effectively is depicting over the last 2 decades at least. But even against his own intention, the synthesis of higher education research as a field shed some gleaming lights on the problems that we can encounter within the field that make the field for years unable to properly respond to the crisis that we all experience. And first aspect of that is the specific origin of higher education research as a praxis. I would say because of the development of the field, which started as a functional tool of the state to navigate, steer, and control the process of the massification, the mainstream higher education research tends to be reformist and technocratic. It rather seeks to better the management of what exists, not to transform what exists. This is outside of the aim scope of the practice itself. Therefore, it fails to recognize and embed in the research agendas the antagonistic dimension of the social reality of higher education and the universities at which we work. So this makes the most of the higher the research agendas presented in higher education research fields detached from the actual praxis, rarely engaging in the lived experience of the academic labor and student resistance. If so, only creating an object of an inquiry that often serves the processes of the activization of the resistance and struggle rather than deepening them and expanding them actually. Another methodological problem of the field as a whole is the claim on epistemic autonomy. I would say neutrality of higher technocratic aspect of most of higher education research nowadays is a form of ideology that often helps to align the results with the managerial agendas or the general capital interest. So, all in all, while most of us are well aware, and because this was a often point of complaints over the last 2 or 3 decades within the field, the higher education research is very dry on theories and very stagnate in terms of development of its own concepts. The worrying practices are the practices of the naturalization of some detached categories that enter the field and then operates as if they were simply plain, transparent, and natural categories used to used to develop the objective description of the higher education reality. In the end, such a field ends up as a rather crass empiricist field dominated by data-driven descriptions that lack conceptual depth. But while I can agree that saying that this green description touches it touches to the core of the problems of the field, but of course it would be an it would be overstretching to say that this is the problem of everyone who participates in the field, and develops the research agendas within the field. But this sharpened critique of the methodological problems simply serves the purpose of making a starting point to think of an alternative. So, is there another way to do social research on higher education? And I would say it's possible if we would, and that's probably for most of you would not be surprised, if we would turn a bit to a different beginnings of social research practice, and if we would, and this is exactly what we've done, draw on the project of Marx and critique. And if we would take a huge step back and think about how critique presents itself in the work of young Marx, which is like a detour of course, nearly 200 years, we would see that at the beginnings of this different line, a different paradigm of doing social research, lays deep conviction of the fact that researching and changing the social reality should be merged into one process, which is epistemopolitical, not epistemological only. So, no matter that Karl Marx, especially in his British period, devoted his life mostly to develop the objectivist theory of the critique of political economy, there is some marginal lines of his contributions to designing, coining, and crafting the research tools that could be used for a different purpose. At some moment late in his life, at the beginning of the 80s in the 19th century, he started to see the limitations of studying only and focusing only on general tendencies of capitalist production. He was interested in helping the growing workers' movement to expand and develop and start to have the advances in actually changing the social and political reality of his days. Even if his idea was a modest proposal of a questionnaire that was supposed to investigate the workers' living conditions and the modes of their resistance, it produced, at least within this line of social inquiry, a novel innovation in the way how the social movements and at the very beginning the social democratic parties or the socialist parties started to look for the modes of knowledge production and modes of knowledge accumulation. And out of this Marxian questionnaire, what developed was a line of workers' inquiry done until today. I would say in the UK you have a brilliant hub of workers' inquiry based in London. Right now, this is like a bunch of activist militants and academic researchers that are active in this field, both methodologically and in terms of actual empirical practice. But what was important in this line of research that fuels what we call the co-research, precedes co-research, is the highlighting of the tension between the knowledge production and the role of political organizations that mobilize for the expansion of the alternative to the current system. This tension is something that is consciously avoided by mainstream social research paradigms, I would say. So if we get to the co-research as a methodology, we can trace back its origins in Italian Marxism of the 60s and 70s, but up to these days, we can observe the development of this form of inquiring on different aspects of social and economic reality, including higher education. So the task behind this type of knowledge production, knowledge proving, is to simply go beyond the false opposition between knowledge and the social movement. So co-research breaks with the traditional model of the academic or an organic intellectual and the model of doing research that separates those who do the research from militants and from those who struggle. The co-research transcends the opposition between theoretical practice and political practice, becoming a process that could be better described as a process aimed at production of subjectivity, a concrete subjectivity or counter-subjectivity that simply develops, expands, and knows how to bring the change. So co-research is rooted in this production of what we can call a living knowledge, something embedded within the movement itself that creates a change against and beyond capitalist structures, especially in institutions such as universities. It could be named a form of political intervention that simply try to posit itself within the actual conflicts and go forward from them in order to simply side with those who struggle injustice, inequalities, exploitation, and any forms of deprivation of the conditions for development of their potential. And in terms of epistemology of co-research challenges the traditional views of the true and objectiveness, I would say, presenting multiple perspectives that serves the political process of political process that stands against the status quo. So if we would like to sum up the differences, and this is only brief comparisons of the three different modes of researching, of which the co-research is the one that we want to illustrate with an example in the later part of this presentation. We could see that the distinction of this mode of researching lays not only in a different approach to the object and the subject of the research. I would say if we would point at one characteristical feature, general feature of co-research, is that it aims to go beyond the division between the researcher and the research object, but not in I would say a way familiar from typical activist form of research, because what is very important is the element of siding within a conflict, like positing itself, this research practice within a specific form of a conflict in which the role of co-research is to simply equip the struggling subjectivities into the knowledge that helps them to expand the conflict and lead towards its actual resolution. So I would say if we aim to be on time, this is the moment where I can stop and ask a question which interests you probably the most: how it can be done. And my colleagues will now take the lead. So I will be moving the slides and sharing the screen. So Adam, if you could take on.
Hello, my name is Adam, and I'm a student at the University of Warsaw and a collaborator at Christian's project. I'm also a member of the Workers' Initiative, the trade union whose youth structures have been the main point of the Polish student protest movement since about 2021. So firstly, I'd like to shed some light on our organization. It was formed in 2001, registered a year later, and it's a militant union center active across many different sectors, from heavy industry, logistics, NGOs, public sector, everything. We engage in different struggles, including wages, working conditions, but also housing, etc. And since 2021, we have been forming youth structures, which were at first limited to supporting workplace struggles, but have since established a significant presence at universities all across the country, not just in terms of employees, so lecturers, but mainly students. We have currently 7 active structures. And the niche of student social struggle has been completely neglected for at least a decade prior. Student organizations have been a big part of the social movement in the 20th century, but have largely disappeared at the turn of the century, not long after the fall of socialism. And the issues we are facing directly relates to the ongoing commercialization of Polish higher education. Despite the constitutional right to free higher education, the infrastructure, the social infrastructure, quite widespread during the socialist era, has become very neglected. Financial support is limited despite the cost of living crisis. Investments in the public student housing sector are literally a few over the last decades. Less than 10% of university students are able to secure a place in affordable student housing. And even worse is the situation in terms of affordable food on campus, because there is no real public canteen system in Poland. Because of that, in December 2023, we decided to occupy the Jowita student dorm in Poznań, which was due to close and go up for sale, decreasing the number of dorm-based places at the disposal of Adam Mickiewicz University by almost 400, and removing students from the otherwise expensive city center. The occupation lasted for 10 days and culminated in a visit from the newly elected Minister for Higher Education, who promised to fund the renovation of Jowita and put it back to use. The protest was quite loud across the city and the country, because it was the first social-oriented student movement protest in living memory. And it was during those 10 days that we collected most of the materials necessary to write our first book. Half a year later in Krakow, a similar situation ensued. The Kamionka dorm, closed and run down for a few years, was due to be sold to a private owner. We have again decided to protest and occupy the building. And this time, the previously sympathetic, at least for show, ministry and the government ignored us, and the rector sent the police to throw us out. But we have resisted, and after 11 days, we reached an agreement with the university authorities, stating that they are not to sell the building. And the third protest is where I am now. We are currently occupying the University of Warsaw since the 23rd of May. And we have addressed the demands to the rector as well as the ministry. And this time we want to create a national fund dedicated to public canteens, among other things. Yeah, last week we managed to get a declaration from the minister that they are willing to give in to our demands.
Okay, hi everyone. So I think that's my part now. So my name is Magda, and I'm also the collaborator on the project. And I'm going to tell more about the actual experience of co-research and then the process of creating the books that you can see on the screen. During those two students' occupation in Poznań and in Krakow, we formed a group of people who wanted to conduct interviews with participants. The group consisted of 5-6 people and was working throughout the events. We conducted 55 interviews in Poznań and 28 in Krakow in 2024. We asked the same questions to all participants. For example, what were they afraid of before the strike? What were they fighting for? What does their ideal university looks like? The interviews were recorded, then transcribed. And during the process, we really wanted to know the perspective of different participants, also those who were at the front of the strike, who were making thousands of decisions every day, who were talking to the media, but also those people who came just for a day, for 2, maybe to just attend one lecture. And you can see that when you read those interviews. Also, you can see how the dynamics of the strike evolved over time. You can see how people's emotions shifted, also that there was exhaustion, for example, at the end. And after that, we supplemented interviews with additional texts, for example, about our previous actions before occupations, we add the timeline of the strike, we add also documents and statements that were produced during the occupations from our side as the students, and also from the authorities or student councils, everyone who were involved in this in some way. And this leads us to the second part, like the idea of turning it all into the book, because why were the reasons to publish a book. First of all, we really wanted to create a lasting archive of the occupation, because before those books, the student movement in Poland was pretty elusive, like hardly any publications were available. If such resources had existed, we might have been able to, avoid certain mistakes or learn better strategies. And I feel that we also felt that absence on some kind of emotional level, that we tried to act, but there was no continuity with previous student struggles. Also, the second reason was that we really want to make it easier for future students to create some kind of step-by-step instruction for them. Not because we think that you can copy the strike, because that's not the point, but to give them some detailed descriptions of everything we did before the strike, like student newspapers, but also to show them our mistakes, to show what was unsuccessful during the whole process. Because, we hope that everyone can learn from them. And last but not least, those books were used as a tool for popularizing the movement. We organized dozens of book discussions on campuses all across Poland. And during those meetings, we had the opportunity to hear about the specific problems faced by students from different universities, from different cities. And probably for some participants, it was the first time that they were able to share their experience, such as expensive housings, lack of dormitories, low scholarships. As you can see on these pictures, we handed out hundreds of books for students for free. We gave also copies to the media, to academics, to libraries, cultural centers, and also even high schools. And all of that resulted in growing the union and creating new structures. The process of working on the book itself was, which may sound a little bit weird, but it was at the same really chaotic and also organized, because we had like this small editorial team that met every week. We talked about our doubts, we made plans, discussed who we could invite. Each of us were responsible for one chapter. We had to make sure it was completed by the deadline. And also because, as you can see, the schedule was really intensive, there was the chaotic part involved, because we decided to create an open call to other union members, because we thought that they also want to publish their reflections, and it can make the book just a better piece. And people were missing deadlines, which led to countless reminders, to messages, emails, and also the editing process itself was sometimes chaotic, because since the book was written by many different people and interviews also were conducted with a very diverse group, the challenge was to make the book coherent, but also not to lose the different perspectives and the original reflections, to not lose them in the process of editing. I feel like we spent hours wondering whether to just rewrite the whole chapter or to throw it away, whether we should leave the original curse words or just to make it better for academics, for example, for media. But I feel that the way that we did it, that the process was as inclusive as possible, was the best decision that we could make at that time, because it made people feel responsible for the project. It made people responsible for the whole movement itself, like for the whole student movement. It also gave them a platform to share their thoughts. And as you will see in a second, because that's my last sentence, basically, in a second, when Adam will tell you more about how we use the co-research, I feel like the way that it was so inclusive and so open to many people, it was the best for our organization and to our future actions.
Yeah, so how has this all this proven useful in our struggles? Looking back at the content of our books, we can clearly see the evolution of our organization, as well as the political effects of our struggles. The current strike, for example, was much easier logistically. We know what to do and what not to do in order for the mobilization to live up to our goals, and it helps our kind of institutional memory in terms of that. And despite being a relatively small radical organization, we have enough know-how to consistently sell our protests to the media and the general public and other students and everyone involved. The logistic translate, but the political strategy not necessarily, because of the confrontations with the university authorities seem to be growing, and they change each time. A few of us have participated in the struggles all the way since the beginning, so many of us know Jowita and Kamionka just from the books. And the biggest challenge for any organization which aims to carry out long-term, multi-year campaigns and stay in the game for more than a short generation of a life cycle of students is to build its own specific set of attitudes and identity or mythology, which is what we achieved by putting our experiences in writing and handing them out to everyone interested. There's no denying that whatever happens in a week during the next protests, whoever comes next after us will have a generous pool of knowledge to refer back to when they start their own projects.
Okay, so let me briefly summarize before we enter the discussion stage. So I would say this is really fuzzy process. Like core research is necessarily a fuzzy process. This is not something that is done by the methodological books. Not that there are any. Like this process is necessarily fuzzy because it's completely open for the not only the dynamics of the conflict, but also open for the future. It aims to re-establish as a horizon within the higher education. And the lessons that can be learned from this process, from launching and conducting and completing the process of core research, but one could say that core research never ends. But the lessons that we can draw from for the purpose of revitalization of higher education research as a practice is that studying and changing the higher education reality through the lenses of conflict from within the conflict can offer a chance to break with the detachment and the servitude of the higher education research. I can tell you and give you a little testimony because, like, except of doing core research, I'm also involved, of course, in a more or less methodologically rigid social research into higher education. And I would say that if not the process of involvement in the struggle from the very ground, I would not be able to understand the many pressing problems of higher education in Poland or worldwide, because the conflict is what really sheds clear light on the actual contradictions and the stakes in higher education. And what can be said to conclude if we are well aware that this example of doing core research in Poland is limited in scope, but it gives us a lot of not only hope but also satisfaction. It could be used as a source of inspiration for furthering this type of knowledge production engagement of higher education researchers in a different context, like conflicts, like on a social scale that involves higher education, are present in our daily life in many different national settings and are there to be supported, not exploited by higher education research community. Thank you very much. And
Great, thank you very much, Adam, Magdalena, and Christian. It's so interesting, and when I look behind you, Adam, I'm wondering whether you're blockaded into your office, or but I'd love to hear more about actually the ongoing occupation in Warsaw. But it sounds as if it also is bearing fruit a bit. So do say a bit more about that at some point. My question for you, and I think what you've given us is a great example, and there obviously are many histories of activist research, of research that doesn't assume neutrality, that is about changing institutions, and they've got lots of different labels and names. And obviously, you're starting with Marx, which is, of course, probably the most the most eminent of research principles. The point is not to understand the world, but to change it. I'm really interested in what you've also focused on here, which is the role of knowledge recording and the archiving of the struggle, because I think that is really unusual here. That sort of you see the writing the book as key both to the sort of conscientization of the struggle itself, but also to recording it. So a really practical question to start with is, where did the funding come from to sort of publish the book? Because that's key in some ways to making a book viable, isn't it? And the publisher as well. I mean, were they committed to to tell us a bit more about that process of finding a publisher willing to support this project?
Maybe
so I don't mind who starts. You can all chip in.
Okay, if they are not willing, that there is some crazy publishers like nowadays in Poland who are willing to support such crazy projects, and like the craziest of all is not the funding, because publishing book is not really that expensive. The craziest thing within this element was the schedule. They produced the book in 3 months, and they published it like in the material form in 3.5 of months. And the book consists of 500 pages. It wasn't easy even to carry. So the financial support for these processes came from, and the funder needs to be mentioned, from Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, the Polish branch. But it was the funding for the covering of the material, the printouts of the books, which was then delivered for free to other students. We published 1,000 copies of the books and distributed them among the students during the book launches. But then later on, also the trade union structure, like for example, of Norwegian trade union, supported the process. So there are like people willing to simply contribute financially to this procedures, which wasn't super hard, I would say. If not the funders, students will simply organize the money through fundraising, which they do.
Mm-hmm. And just one more follow on. I mean, to publish a 500-page book and give it out to lots of people, it does feel an unusual move in a digital age. Did you decide not to create a digital archive? Because that could be equally an accessible open access resource that could have been an ebook. I mean, but you did mention ebook, but you obviously decided it was important to have a print copy. Tell me about that.
Okay, so I feel like when you have the printed out book, it is like the way that you start the conversation. Because if we did the meetings and only show the QR code on the screen, like nobody would probably even read this. Okay. And when you have the whole table of books, people are just going closer, and you can talk to them. They ask something, they see something material, and they also think that, hey, maybe if I can join, I can maybe write also a book. Maybe what to do. So I feel that also it was this part of surprise that we didn't just create a website, but we did something material. But also it was just a bigger deal to show that we did the book.
That's so interesting. So somehow it becomes much more real, much more, and a tool in awareness raising. Adam.
Yeah, and also the simple fact that we can now see the book in public libraries in the country, like people can stumble upon them, or people who were involved in the protests can see their own kind of even a couple sentences that they told us in the interviews. They can see that put into writing and really existing. I believe it was quite a big step for us for like materializing the fact, because the entire struggle is not just for the material realization of what we want, but also not to be erased as the people who kind of fought for that, because everyone kind of denies us even existence at times. It just seems like it's not a real organization for some people.
Okay. So the book is the living archive somehow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I could ask more, but I got a couple of questions. Adam, do you want to come in?
Sure, thank you. Super interesting, and really great to hear as well, kind of such detail about things happening on the ground and kind of bring that together with some of this more macro level thinking about research and its assumptions. Christian, like I share massively your assumptions about the normativity of higher education studies as a field, and yet, you know, I've kind of been thinking this through a lot from political anthropology and social movement studies this year. And actually, I've kind of come to this thought where originally I thought this research didn't tend to exist. And now I realize, okay, with people starting from a very different position, there has been a lot of thought about the academy's implication in social movements, its position. You know, writers like Mario Novelli or the radical imagination of Max Haven, these kinds of ways of thinking. And, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking, why are we not better in having conversations that don't run parallel, right? Like, why is this not more of a shared discussion? Is it something about kind of, again, the points at which we're starting the conversation from, or just something about academia more generally? So yeah, I suppose one question is, as you've been going through this research process, to what extent has the theory from kind of other disciplines, social movement or political anthropology, but also just the people, right? The people who are going to be involved in these social movements on the ground that you're involved in, and naturally, I assume will come from different disciplines. You know, is there a sense that the anthropologists think you just do normative stuff because that's the kind of imaginary they have of the discipline? Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how that kind of disciplinary interaction plays out.
Great, thanks, Adam. Really interesting question. Who wants to respond to that?
I can, I don't know, like start and offer a conversational start. I would say, like, I would say what was refreshing in that, of course, with today we framed that as a part of conversation about how to think of changing methodologies within higher education research. But this is like a more general topic about the knowledge production itself. And I would say the refreshing aspect of that was that the whole procedure here was absolutely completely undisciplinary and undisciplined. And I would say like it was a kind of a partisanship against the knowledge structures and the disciplines. That was also thanks to the refreshing positions of most of students, I would say, who come from the very, very, very different backgrounds. But I would say this type of undisciplined territory for knowledge production is natural sites where the Marxism blooms, I would say, as Marxism in itself is a proposition of a more integrative approach to knowledge that simply gets away from the disciplinary confines. But I'm not sure if this answer is satisfactory at all, but this is like a definitely an important thing to discuss further. And this was only I would say, nobody here claims specific novelty for this in terms of you know, like developing a new methodology, because academic methodology and so on, because this was not an aim. I simply, when we decided to ask David for a slot, we simply thought that sharing enthusiasm about the practice is more important than that, you know, like academic nuances. And CG seminars is definitely a home for also this type of reflection, which I'm very grateful.
I wonder if the struggle becomes you know, rather than everyone being bound by a discipline, it's the idea of struggle as a practice, which kind of bounds this undisciplinary approach. Super interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I mean, I was at a workshop last week on a new book on activist research that had been written in honor of Ruth First, and you know, you can look at History Workshop, or you can look at feminist activism. There are so many different histories of research for change, aren't there? And I think that's sort of your point, isn't it? Is how one works with those parallel histories, and not assume that only one history is the right one. But yeah, thank you very much, Adam and Christian. Let's go on, because we have a couple more questions. Daniel first, and then Ivan.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, indeed.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Christian and Madalena and Adam. That is such a fantastic work. Now, one question, but in twofold. So one for Christian, yourself as a staff, doing this research with students who are leading this activism and writing from their experience. I know that this is something that probably wouldn't happen in the US. So you as a researcher, how do you reflect over this with your student doing this? That I don't know how it is in Poland, the academic freedom and all of that. So yourself as your career, thinking about your career and the potential of what this could lead to. And how do you position yourself with your student, thinking that they still have a future to go, and so on and so forth. And then for Adam and Madalena, yourself as student, thinking about the future and thinking about how academic restriction happens across other contexts. How do you reflect over this and doing this with that passion and motivation? So if you could just reflect, I just want to see how you position yourself within this sort of conflict across the world.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Should we start with Adam? And then, do you want to mute yourself, Daniel?
Well, thank you.
That's great, thank you.
So we can start.
Yeah. Madalena, you go, and then Adam.
Okay, so I have already graduated before we started occupations, so I was not a student anymore. But I feel like being part of the movement brought me closer to academia than I was before. And I feel like right now I don't see university as only a building, but I see it as an organization where you can change something. Being part of university, you can change also what is going outside. So I'm going to apply for a PhD actually this year. And I just, I see my future research as a way to make some people views different and to just make a change. So that's what happened.
That's brilliant. Rather than running away, you're going to roll up your sleeves and get more involved. That's brilliant. Thank you. Adam.
So similar for me, I think after I was a third-year student when the first protests started, and I think it gave me a completely new look at what research could be, because it was not just something that I found interesting, but it also was something that I shared with people, and something that kind of I felt like it needed to be said. And because it was not just an innovative method, but also an innovative event, something that was unprecedented in recent years, I truly believe that what we are doing can be important. And it just kind of made me look completely different at what it meant to be a researcher, I guess.
Great, thank you. That's again valuable. Thank you so much. And Christian, is your career on the line?
Not at all, I would say. Like the great aspect of having a academic career, if there is something like this in Polish system, is that nobody cares about you. Like there are like different reasons to break my career other than this involvement. Of course, it's not really appreciated by the authorities, but as long as nobody, because the first occupation strike took place at our university, I would say, the one where I'm employed, and most of academics were afraid to simply get into contact with students. But yeah, I would say I know they are like decent people fighting for a decent cause, and my task is to support that, no matter what is the opinion of the people who will then at the future stages decide on my academic advances. I'm tired with academia, so either it will burn or we will change it. I don't want to spend my life in the crisis-led higher education system in Poland whatsoever. So academics have nothing to lose but their chains. So that's the Marxian phrase that I can respond to that.
I think you need to rewrite that. Academics have nothing to lose but their citations, probably. But anyway, well, thank you, Christian. This is all very polemical, but that's great. It's always good to stir the conversations up. Ivan, you have your hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Hi, welcome, Ivan.
Okay. First of all, thank you for this wonderful talk. I have a very simple question, actually, about theoretical part of the presentation. So I assume the question will be for Christian. So you mentioned the notion of organic intellectual, and also you mentioned the term co-research. That are both of them are super interesting. So the question is, what is the correlation between these two terms? Like, what is the role of the organic intellectual and the co-research? Because it seems that by the definition, the organic intellectual is representing a certain interest of the class, right? As Gramsci has written in his famous work. So how it is connected to the core research and with the student movement? I think it was not really covered well, because I see here like some different kind of hierarchies. Organic intellectual, usually someone who has already a certain career, and the core research is done with students who do not have such a long-standing career yet, let's say, but have a certain interest in this idea. So I was just wondering, what are the correlations here? Thank you.
Sure, to put it briefly, because we are running out of time, and we can have this conversation later on, of course. So I would say that the fear of organic intellectual is something that goes that is supposed to be abolished through the movement of co-research. But if you ask about figures of, and this is very important question for this methodological question for this whole line of knowledge production practices within Marxism. What is the role and place and the place of this type of figures, like whether it's a militant, intellectual, intelligent from the Eastern sphere or whatsoever. Here, like Italian tradition reformulates, like produce the figure for itself, and offers a figure of a militant, which is like some sort, not privileged epistemologically, but privileged in terms of being not a person, a subject that embeds both engagement into practice and the intellectual sphere, like traverse the dichotomy. But yeah, this is a long discussion within the Marxism and other forms of thinking about knowledge production practice that we can discuss later on. So thank you for this question.
Great, thank you, Ivan. Well, I haven't got any others. So thank you for there's some various comments in the chat which are saying well done. So that's great. One final little question then from me to Adam particularly. You're currently in the middle of an occupation, and it seems to be working. So what is it about these occupations is it that the authorities are scared to intervene in a way that they often, if you look at the history of the Gaza protests, they've often been closed down and not engaged with? You seem to be getting engagement from authorities. Are you surprised by that?
Well, yes and no, because the first time that we started occupying 2 years ago, the response was kind of like instant, and they thought that we were a bunch of harmless, weird guys. But then when it became clear that we're quite organized, the most organized probably group of people who fight for this kind of causes, they currently are trying to wait us out. For example, the first meeting we managed to meet with the government authorities first before the rector, because the rector is still waiting and kind of making excuses not to talk to us because they kind of hope that we'll look stupid when the holidays started and people stop coming to the occupation. So it's a really challenge because they don't really have good arguments not to give in to our demands, and yet they're trying to use those kind of soft strategies to demotivate us and kind of disintegrate the protests, which we are prepared for. But it's a different question. What kind of could be the next level of escalation of such protests, because the occupations kind of became the norm in Poland.
Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, I think we probably ought to wrap it up, but it's so interesting and so important what you've done, and wishing you luck with the next steps, and you know, what the point you're making is that the arguments are strong, and so that's the grounds on which the protest is based, isn't it? It's you know, there is this is about the living conditions of students in a neoliberal academy where the cost of living becomes impossible to study. So we will share the slides, and if there is a link to any resources, we'll share that as well. I'd like to thank you all again for a really great talk, a really interesting conversation, and best of luck with future projects. And I'm just going to wrap up finally by saying that next week is the last seminar of our current series for the summer break, and we are turning from Poland to perforated nations, and Susan Robertson will be presenting a chapter of a book that she's written about zonal politics and knowledge production. So you're all most welcome to that, and as ever, we'll always put these webinars up on our website so you can come back and watch us again at a future point. Thanks again, everyone. Really enjoyed that, and thanks for your time today, Adam, Magdalena, and Christian. Great to see you. Thank you. Bye-bye.